One of those things you're not going to be able to do. And that's one of the things you have to learn as a director is how far can you go with somebody before it just becomes like annoying to both the director, annoying to the actor, and a bad performance. Yes, you have a question.
Because I met him last year here, I was wondering your opinion on Johnny and Bosch and how good was having to be working with him. I know he did some work on Street Fighter. So.
Well, yeah, Johnny. I've worked with Johnny for many, many years. Johnny's a great actor, and John, I feel like Johnny has done. He's very much easily cast as the young hero, teen hero type for a lot of stuff. But I know he has a lot of range, and I know he can do things differently too. So I don't always look at. I mean, yeah, whenever I got the young sort of late teen action, typical main character hero type, Johnny's always someone I want to consider for things. But I've heard him do other things, but that gives a very interesting story. If you want to talk about not casting the type, let's talk about Crispin Freeman and Hellsing. Before Hellsing, if you listen to Crispin Freeman's work before that, he was doing the light comedy, good everyman, good guy. He did Captain Tyler. He was like very much, just sort of silly, like light voice, things like that. And everybody cast him as sort of that kind of character. And when we started casting for Hellsing, we were considering him to play one of the Valentine brothers. We thought he would play Luke or Jan, because we thought we'd go American on those, because we wanted to have a British cast play for Hellsing, for the main characters. And Crispin came in and he said, "Can I read for Alucard?" And we were like, Taliesin and we were like, we were first because we were looking for originally we were looking for a British voice for Alucard. We thought something deep and sort of heavy and kind of imposing and scary. But most of the British actors that we would deal with came into audition, they sounded too polite. It sounded they either sounded two ways. They sounded very polite, "Oh, hello, I'd like to have a cup of tea with you." Or they would be like some kind of sort of cocky, very, just thuggish, "Hey, what you talking about here?" kind of thing like that. So there was no this really British, scary, imposing type of voice. So, but we didn't want to upset the actor by saying, "No, you can't read for this role." And of course, it was going to take a few more minutes for him to audition for us. So we'll give him a chance. And he came in and he wowed us with that Alucard voice that now everybody knows so well. And now everybody uses him to do that instead of the Captain Tyler type voice, which is completely funny, because now it's like he kind of always comes up to me and says, ever since because of Hellsing, now everybody just wants me to do the deep, scary voice, though never the light kind of thing. So it's like, so I love you and I hate you, John. Because you will have me, but that's one of the things as a director, is never try to pigeonhole people into one type of role. You will be amazed when you can discover that so many people can do so many different types of voices and so many different types of characters. And because we're talking about voice acting as opposed to appearing before camera, don't let appearance of the actor to judge how they train. When I first met Kylie Bear, I thought, he could probably be like a heavy, a villain, or something like that. And then Kyle went in the booth and he just wowed me with 30 different voices of 30 different characters that you've never seen before. From light and nerdy to huge, deep, scary guys to funny, comedical, old, things. It was just, he had such an enormous amount of talent that I realized after that first session with him, I should not just consider casting him as the villain or some kind of bad guy, thing, because his vocal abilities are just so enormous and so wide-ranging. There's another guy named Fred Tavish. Fred, big guy, sweet guy, is the voice of the Hulk. Okay, in all the Marvel cartoons. But the man has such an enormous range. He can do British, he can do all these he could do 20 different characters and you would never know it's the same man. And that's something you have to understand when it comes to being a voice director, is never just assume they can do one kind of voice. So when somebody asks you, can I audition for something else? be free to say, yeah, sure, we'll give it a try. Yes?
Like, what like voice talents would you make reach out to once in a while? Like, it's like nominees. Like, would you ever go out to people who do maybe audiobooks, some Michael Page? Would you ever?
Well, here's the thing. See, this is true with most directors. Directors have, most voice directors have what they call a circle of talent that they're go-to people. They're the people they're most comfortable with. They're the people, whether it's me, whether it's Taliesin, whether it's people like Andrea Romano, they're the people they'll reach out to first because they have a great, when they see a character and they say, oh, I think this person would be great for that character. Now, it's a good thing and a bad thing. It's good because it makes it very easy to cast things quickly, but it's bad because it doesn't allow you the option to bring in new talent. So on every project, I try to bring in at least one or two new people that I've never worked with before. Maybe as smaller supporting roles, just to see what I can see they can do. Now, the person who you mentioned, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with, but what I try to do is open up that circle of talent, make it bigger and bigger with each project so that it becomes a very large pile of talent. Now, there are projects that I do where I do have very large open casting because they're looking for a specific type of voice match for a specific type of character. So I'll call a bunch of the voice agencies in Hollywood and say, okay, this is the type of voice we're looking for. If you have people like that, have them send me auditions, and then I will bring them in. So if I like what I hear, I'll bring them in to read for me. So I do try to open that up, but it just depends on the actors and the opportunities that are provided to them. Let me ask you a question: how many of you are interested in becoming voice actors? Raise your hand. Okay. So the first lesson I think you've all learned is you need to study the craft of becoming an actor first. That's the key. There's no shortcut to becoming a voice actor. People always say, oh, I have a great voice, or I can do this thing, or I can do that, this voice. We're not looking for impersonators, we're looking for actors. And acting can be part of, you can be part of community theater, you can join a drama club, you can get together with a bunch of friends and do radio plays. The thing is, you have to try to learn to hone your craft. Second thing, for those people who are really interested in becoming actors and voice actors, is you have to move to where the work is. I think you've heard that lots of times. So, for anime, most of the work is done down in Texas, down in Funimation. Also down in Houston with whatever they're called, whatever ADV is called these days. I don't know whatever name of the week they're using. There are LA studios that also do anime work. I've done anime work for a long time, up until about 2007. When there was the big anime crash, and my biggest client was Genion, and they went out of business basically, so we stopped working with them. However, we didn't stop doing anime altogether because things like Hellsing continued on, and we also, Funimation reached out to us on projects that we were previously involved with, like Ikitosen and Bayonetta. So I have directed anime from time to time, just not as much as I used to. And I like directing anime because it's great when you're dealing with anime, as I said earlier on, you have a story arc. So you develop characters. There's a lot more creativity in building up a character from the start to the finish. And when it comes to video game, which is basically the character does this, and then they die, and then you're restarting it, basically. And, or you succeed, you win. But the point is, there's also the differences between directing anime and video games, I find, is that with anime, it was like they would give us a Japanese script and a Japanese master tape and say, produce an English dub for us. So we would do all the translation, script adaptation, casting. They would listen to the casting, just give us their approvals and stuff, things like that. But then when it came to me as a director, I had creativity to develop the performances the way I saw fit. And there wasn't somebody from the company over my shoulder telling me what to do. When I work in video games, and I love working in video games, I don't say this disparagingly because I understand video game companies spend, the average anime spends maybe anywhere between $150,000 to $250,000 an episode. The average video game spends, on the low end, it's like $5 million. On the high end, it can be $100 million, like a AAA title. So you're basically directing a feature film. And of course, they want to make sure they're now, that doesn't mean $100 million are going into the voice actors. God, I wish it was. But that's why you don't see Kevin Spacey in Street Fighter V. But that being said, they want to make sure their investment is being paid, is their money is being well spent. So I usually have a group of people behind me, anywhere between 1 and 3 people from the game company, sitting in to listen to me direct. And sometimes they'll give me their input, and sometimes they won't give me their input. Sometimes they'll just say, okay, we like what you're doing, keep going, things like that. And there's the most horrible situation for a director to have, which is when you have 3 guys behind you that can't decide amongst themselves what they want. And then you're spending line to record a line, and you're turning to them, and they're going, especially if they're talking in Japanese, and like suddenly it's directing by consensus. It's no longer, I no longer have the power to direct, and also it makes the actors feel incredibly awkward because they're looking at a bunch of people that, unless I have the talkback mic on, they have no idea what's going on unless they can read lips sometimes. But some of them might, but if it's a bunch of Japanese guys, they probably can't read what they're saying at this point. So they're getting scared. Oh my God, they don't like me. What's wrong? What's going on here? Things like that. And so my job as a director is to make sure they stay focused on their role and their work. So I will start, while they're deciding things, I'm trying to keep them calm and communicate with them and try to get them focused on the next point of the scene. Now, fortunately, once I've developed a good relationship with the game companies I work with, they usually allow me to do things the way I feel should be done. And I say, please, I'm open to any suggestions you have, but let me try to develop the character's performance first. And then once I feel like we've gotten to a good place, if you feel like you want to make some changes or alteration, we can go back and fix those things that you feel need to be changed. Because once you do that, once you get the actor comfortable, you can get them on a roll. You can get them to pull things out of them. Another cool thing, another good thing, suggestion for you, those of you who might be interested in becoming a voice director. Anybody here interested in becoming a voice director? Good. Oh, nice. All right. Well, you have to sometimes trust the actor's instincts. That you should let them sometimes, they may say something to you like, can I try something else? I have an idea for something. And they might give you, like you told them to give a performance that's like bittersweet emotion. And then they say, can I try one other thing? And the thing, you feel like you got a good performance out of it. They suddenly say, let me try one more thing. And they pull something that was even better, something you couldn't even imagine. And you realize they took what you said and built upon and made something even better. And then you have to say that was awesome. And now on the other hand, sometimes that happens and it's awful. And you say, no, I don't think so. But you don't have to be mean to them. The one thing you never say to actors, that sucked, do it again. I mean, believe me, there are directors who do that. And those are, I consider to be the worst type of directors. Just that's not what directing is about. Directing is about pulling out performances by collaborative effort. It's the same way you would do it with a film, except you don't have the luxury of a set and costumes and a camera and things to help you create that performance in other ways. So you have to be able to listen to the actor as well. It's about, again, it's communication, but it's not just telling people what to do. Your job as a director, though, does involve filling in the blanks of the story, because when you're just directing one actor in the booth, they're only going to jump to their scenes. Meanwhile, there may be a whole bunch of cut scenes in an anime where other characters are doing something, and they have no idea. And you have to tell them what's going on in the background if it's relevant to their character, if it builds upon their character story. If you just say, okay, we'll go to the next line, read this line, and you don't fill in those blanks, the actor has nothing to build a performance upon. And that is something that is key to making a good performance. And sometimes it actually means taking people out of the booth to help them to understand their character better. I remember on a show called Paranoia Agent, I don't know if any of you've seen it or not. I know it's been on Cartoon Network a couple of times. There was a late great actor, his name was Dean Briscoe. And he was in a couple of episodes, he plays this corrupt cop who's basically sort of shaking down the Yakuza for money. And it comes to bite him in the ass because now the Yakuza like turns it around and makes him start paying them back, basically. And he goes into this really awful downward spiral as a result of it. So when we start doing the character in the booth, I wasn't getting the performance I was looking for. It was kind of hard because it was like, I don't think the voice was wrong for it, because it wasn't the voice. I knew when I listened to him audition for the role, I knew he had the right voice for the character, but there was something about the performance that just didn't feel right. And, you know, I would try to use different directions to try to get him to evoke the performance I want, but it wasn't working. So I had to take a few minutes, because I was getting worried that maybe I made a mistake. Maybe it was a miscast. So I should go and, do I need to recast this role? But I said to him, he actually said, like, what do you want me to do? How would you like me to do this? I said, you know what, let's take a few minutes and discuss it. So, because I then sat outside and I explained the character to him more in depth. Explained that this guy is really a good guy at heart. He may be corrupt, but the point is, he's corrupt because he wants a better life for his family. He wants to build him a house. He wants to put his kid through college. He wants to do these things. He feels like these are like little small bad things that's not really hurting anybody. He's shaking down a criminal organization. They're criminals. They're bad people. He doesn't look at himself as being a bad person. And I had to we spent a good 10, 15 minutes just talking about what the character was all about. And then he came back into the booth, and suddenly he was the character. And that really, really helped a lot to get him into performance. And sometimes that's something you need to do as a director, is to really take the time to explain that to somebody. You can't just say, okay, you're the teen hero of the show, and you know your father was killed and you're seeking revenge for his death, and now you're going after him back. Yeah, that explains the plot, but that doesn't explain the motivations behind what he's doing, other than the fact that his father was killed. What was he like before that? What was his father like to him? How did all this come together? And that's what you have to do, is paint a picture as a director to your actor, to tell them what it is you need from them. Another question, anybody? Yes.
So when it comes to character development, especially when a character is already developed in Japanese, making it still their own character but keeping the same personality traits, is it difficult to do that?
Well, it depends what you mean. Are you talking about in terms of just following the Japanese character personality traits?
Yeah, because I know they have their own set personality traits that have been established in the Japanese
Right.
version.
Well, you have to not go. The rule is to be faithful to what the Japanese have done without making it just an imitation of it, a pale imitation of what the performance is. So what you got to do is you got to say, with the actor, how can they make it their own? Now, the quirkiness, the tics, the things that bring out the character, make it unique, you should try to carry that over, because especially if they were very endearing to the audience in Japanese, you want them to be endearing to the audience in English as well. On the other hand, there are certain things that do not work well, like in Japanese they have this nano, or these affectations that little kids put on things, basically. They always have so nano, or kun, or chin, they put nicknames, things that we don't normally do in English. Now part of it has to be fixed in the ADR script adaptation, and part of it does not, and part of it has to be you as a director still giving something of that element, that childish element in there without having to be an exact copy of the Japanese. And it can be tricky. It's how far do you go to get that element without making the character too weird or too Japanese for the story. So. Other questions? Yes?
So when working in video games, what can a studio do to make your job easier?
Well, more information about each character, more information about the story as we go along. Like, when I worked on Street Fighter V, we had no visuals whatsoever to work with, but they did give us some of the script that we had. Like, there's going to be I can tell you this because it's already been announced, but, and by the way, I'm doing a Street Fighter panel at 8 o'clock tonight. I hope some of you will come to that. There's going to be a Street Fighter movie story, interactive storyline that's coming out in June. That's going to be an add-on to the game, and in that, there's a lot. We had a Japanese script, but there were things like descriptions of what's going on with the characters. It wasn't just a line and a file name and a Japanese audio file reference. It was actually like, in this scene, Ken does this. Meanwhile he's, there, and what's going on in this thing. And we had to translate all that. But because of that, we had a much more complete picture of what's involved with it. Visuals are always great. Back in the early days of dubbing Japanese games into English, I had, because there was usually a delay of anywhere between 6 months to a year from the Japanese release to the US release, we would have time to see the game and see all the elements, so I would be able to use that as a reference to help bring out the performances of people. Sometimes we would show them those things. But now, in this modern world that we live in, where simultaneous worldwide release, literally I'm getting the scripts almost the same time the Japanese are, and we're recording the audio maybe weeks after the Japanese record the audio. So it's a lot of just getting the company to give us as much information as possible with the character. And if they can't do that, provide me somebody who can fill in the blanks and answer the questions about the story while I'm working on it. Yes?
How important over the years has become, or has knowing Japanese as well as knowing a little bit more about the culture, how important has that become into your directing and voice acting?
Well, I took 2 years. The question was about how much knowing Japanese is helpful or important to directing. It's both a blessing and a curse. I only took 2 years of Japanese in college, so I am far from fluent. I speak some of it. I speak it probably on a grade school level, and at best. So I'm not fluent. I don't try to speak Japanese to my Japanese clients because I know I embarrass myself when I do it. But there are certain things I can pick up. But the problem is Japanese is such a complex language. Like English, there are homonyms, and lots of words can have multiple meanings. So if I use my basic Japanese and pick up, use that to let's say, oh, I know what they're talking about here. And it turns out that they're talking about something completely different. I just screwed the pooch on the script and the performance, basically. And so I try not to do that. And that's why I usually rely on the scripts. Now, on the other hand, I spend a lot of time in Japan. I do pick up the Japanese culture, so I can explain to the actors about Japanese cultural elements, with jokes, dajare, where they call it, like, there's a word place in Japanese. Puns, yeah, exactly. So a lot of puns and dajare. So, and to explain what they were doing in Japanese, how we're interpolating it into English, so they can sort of apply the same kind of wackiness to it too, rather than say, wow, this sounds really corny, and it's like, well, yeah, but here's how it's being applied, and here's how it's going on and thing. So I try, when I'm directing, I'm trying to direct in English and focus on getting the best English performance out of the actors. Now, on the other hand, when you have a game like Street Fighter, Hadouken is always Hadouken, no matter what. And Shoryuken is Shoryuken. You can't change it to Fireball and Dragon Punch. I saw you had a question back there, sir. Your hand was up.
You answered my question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, this is probably going to be our last question because I think we have to wrap things up. But yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering, how does age affect, like, how you limit roles? Like, if someone gets old, someone gets young, does it really affect it for voice acting?
How the age of the actor or the age of the
Yeah,
character?
age of the actor
Okay.
versus the age of the character.
Let me tell you a few things. Like, there are actors that are in their 60s and 70s who could sound like teenagers right now. I mean, the greatest example is like Janet Waldo, who, you know, was Judy Jetson and Princess of Battle of Planets. She was like in her 60s and 70s when she was doing, you know, all of it, was still doing her Judy Jetson voice. So it depends on the, not to say that people's voices don't change over time. And yeah, I sometimes try to cast people close to the age, but if they can do a younger voice, I will certainly keep them on. Or a young person be able to do a realistic sounding or not, I'm an old man! You know, that's not the thing I want. But you know, I try to sometimes cast people to age also because it helps them to relate to the characters better. Like when I directed Paranoia Agent, I had Michael McConaughey play Detective Ikari, and he was, you know, like a late 40s, like early 50s guy, basically, sort of in his twilight years of being a police detective. And McConaughey had that kind of worn, weathered kind of voice, like somebody who's seen a lot and worked, you know, and has been through it all. And sort of had the experience. I had Liam O'Brien playing Detective Mindwise, the young, fresh-faced, idealistic detective who wanted to solve the case and do good, things like that. So those kinds of things work very well for that particular show. But I don't always limit actors by their age to play younger or older roles. If they can sound the way that they should sound, for my taste and for the audience taste, I'm more than happy to do it. I want to thank you all for coming in, despite all the confusion about it. I hope you learned something about both voice acting. I'm going to make a shameless plug about the charity auction tomorrow. We got a bunch of amazing stuff from a lot of anime and video games I've worked on, including Street Fighter and Hellsing and everything like that. Go down if you want to the second floor of the charity auction screening room. They have all the items there available for what they're going to be bidding on. It's Sunday, 12 noon to 4 p.m. in the same room they're showcasing the items on the second floor. Thank you again for coming in. Hope I just get to see you again. If you have any other questions, please feel free to come up to the side here and ask me. Thank you so much.